For over 300 years, tens of thousands of women in Europe were executed due to this cycle of mutual denunciation. One moment, she was just an ordinary housewife, but in the next, she was tied to a stake as a witch. The family members who once loved her now stood by, singing and dancing. Yet these so-called witches didn't actually know any witchcraft. They were nothing more than ordinary people. In medieval Europe, due to frequent disasters such as famine and plague, people began to lose faith, which in turn threatened the Pope's authority. To reassert control, the Roman Church blamed all these misfortunes on witches, beings that did not even exist. The Church told people that as long as they could find and kill the witches hiding among them, then diseases, famines, and even infertility would be resolved. This absurd claim ignited the infamous witch hunts in history. At first, people had no idea how to identify witches. The Church quickly realized this problem and provided a solution. The inquisitors of the Inquisition personally wrote a book titled Malleus Maleficarum, The Hammer of Witches. This book taught people how to identify witches and transformed the already absurd witch hunt into a systematic massacre targeting women. The book claimed that female witches were more dangerous than male witches because women were more easily tempted by the devil. The methods listed in the book for identifying witches were completely irrational. It stated, if a woman weighed less than 5 kilograms, she was definitely a witch. If she weighed more than 5 kilograms, then she was a witch who had used magic to alter her weight. If a woman had many children, it meant she had stolen others' fertility through witchcraft. If she had no children, it meant she had sacrificed her fertility to practice witchcraft. If, during interrogation, she looked around, she was seeking help from the devil. If her gaze was dull and unfocused, she was communicating with the devil. If she endured torture without screaming, the devil was protecting her, so harsher torture was needed. If she died under torture, it meant the devil had killed her to keep his secrets. In summary, according to the book, anyone labeled as a witch was automatically guilty. Despite its ridiculous claims, Malleus Maleficarum became a widely accepted Bible of the witch hunts, with almost everyone owning a copy. But in practice, the methods in the book led to terrifying consequences. In the midst of these witch hunts, a man who had lustful thoughts about a woman he couldn't have would simply accuse her of using witchcraft to seduce him in his dreams. A man who found his female neighbor unattractive or bad-tempered could accuse her of being a witch because her temperament was as fierce as the devil's. If a woman returned home before a rainstorm, while others got drenched, they would accuse her of using witchcraft to control the weather. Back then, just a single accusation was enough to take an innocent woman's life. And to prove their innocence, women had to endure humiliating ordeals. They were stripped naked in public, had all body hair, except the hair on their heads, shaved off and were examined for so-called devil's marks, like birthmarks or scars. If none were found, the inquisitors would stab them with needles all over their bodies. If any area didn't bleed, it was proof of witchcraft. Additionally, the accused were subjected to the infamous water test. If a woman floated, she was a witch. If she sank but didn't drown, more torture was required to confirm her guilt. These brutal methods ensured that many so-called witches died in agony. As the hysteria escalated, people began accusing each other to avoid being accused themselves. Even family members turned against one another in a desperate attempt to survive. The only way to protect oneself was to accuse others first. Women who were forced to confess awaited even more horrifying punishments. Those convicted of witchcraft were often burned alive in public squares because it was believed that fire could purify their souls. However, other tortures even worse than burning existed. Some were torn apart from the legs, others had their intestines slowly pulled out. In medieval Europe, once accused of being a witch, death by torture was inevitable. And yet the masses, blinded by the church, cheered and celebrated as their loved ones were brutally executed. To them, this was a righteous purge. Over the course of 3 centuries, tens of thousands of innocent women were slaughtered. Eventually, as science advanced and legal systems improved, the witch hunts came to an end. However, they never truly disappeared. Today, witch hunts have taken on a new form: online public shaming. The internet allows people to unleash their malice without consequences. It takes just 3 days for an online mob to destroy someone's life, and within 3 months they forget about it entirely. But for the person targeted, the damage lasts a lifetime. How many people still remember the mother who was bullied online until she jumped to her death? How many remember the 24-year-old woman with pink hair? Or the elderly man in Wuhan selling sweet soup for 2 yuan? Behind the anonymity of the internet, people act with impunity. A few lines of text can become a deadly weapon. It allows individuals to feel the thrill of being an inquisitor, satisfying their deep-seated desire for vigilante justice. Just like the witch hunts of the past, even if innocent people suffer, the mob refuses to stop. When human malice is unleashed, truth becomes irrelevant. The real goal is not justice, it is the pleasure of persecuting others. And in this modern witch hunt, anyone could be the next victim. So before you assume the role of an inquisitor, pause for a moment, because even a single second of hesitation might be enough to fight back against this violence.